तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठम् अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यैः सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ तपोभिः क्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्ष्योऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. I welcome you all to the 7th class of the Atma Bodha series. We will start by reading verses 8 and 9 that we covered in the last class. उपादानेऽखिलाधारे
उपादानेऽखिलाधारे
जगन्ति परमेश्वरे
जगन्ति परमेश्वरे
सर्गस्थितिलयान् यान्ति
सर्गस्थितिलयान् यान्ति
बुद्बुदानीव वारिणि
बुद्बुदानीव वारिणि
सच्चिदात्मन्यनुस्यूते
सच्चिदात्मन्यनुस्यूते
नित्ये विष्णौ प्रकल्पिताः
नित्ये विष्णौ प्रकल्पिताः
व्यक्तयो विविधाः सर्वा
व्यक्तयो विविधाः सर्वा
आटके कटकादिवत्
हाटके कटकादिवत्.
So humanity has always wondered about how this world was produced, what caused this world to come about. And we have various answers from different sources. And science is on one end of the spectrum, and theology is on the other end of the spectrum. They have all tried to answer this question. What science says is that the entire world started with the Big Bang, some 13.5 billion years ago. But as we saw in the last class, it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. Science says that Big Bang spewed out all the matter that makes up this world. But science doesn't answer the question about how this matter came together in the form of such an orderly universe around us. Nor does science answer the question about how consciousness arises from matter. How do conscious beings arise? And science is silent about what caused the Big Bang itself. On the other hand, we have theology at the other end of the spectrum that says that some God in heaven, sitting in heaven, created this world. But that too leaves a lot of unanswered questions about who created heaven. And if it was God that created heaven, then where was God before heaven was created? And what is the necessity to place that God in heaven if God can exist without heaven? And also, science too agrees with the fact that space and time themselves were not there before the creation. Before the Big Bang, there was no space and no time. In fact, there is no question of before the Big Bang, because the question of before arises only if there is time. But science too agrees that time and space and everything started with the Big Bang. And if such is the situation, then where do you place this heaven if there is no space at all? So we don't get very satisfying answers from either science or theology. On the other hand, Vedanta provides a lot of insight on this question. Vedanta points out that yes, this is a very orderly creation. There's a lot of knowledge involved in this. Such knowledge can reside only in a conscious being. Whenever there's an intelligently put together thing, there's a maker of the thing who has the knowledge of that thing. Sarvasya karta sarvajñah. So the one who has made the entire thing into such an orderly universe should be omniscient, all knowledgeable. And such knowledge can reside only in a conscious being, and therefore Ishvara is the intelligent cause. And what is the nature of Ishvara? If we ask, Ishvara is of the nature of consciousness. So consciousness existed before this world came into being. And then there is a question of if Ishvara is the nature of consciousness, where did Ishvara get all the material from? Because just the maker is not enough to make a product, the material is also required. Vedanta points out that Ishvara himself appears as this universe. Ishvara finds the material within himself. So it's the unified material and intelligent cause. Abhinna nimitta upadana karanam. Very much like our dream. Before this dream, the conscious being is asleep. From the conscious being, this dream gets projected. Where did this conscious being find the material for the dream? From within the conscious being. There is nowhere outside to go because even space has not yet been created. And what are the components of Ishvara? If we look into this, then we have said consciousness is one component. All-pervading, imperishable consciousness. But this consciousness is also changeless. Changeless consciousness. So changeless consciousness alone cannot account for this plurality. Therefore, Vedanta points out that there is another factor called Maya. Brahmashraya Maya Asti. And Maya consists of the entire world that is about to be projected in an unmanifest form. Just as the entire tree is in an unmanifest form in the seed. So Maya is all the unmanifest Nama Rupas that are going to be projected. And why do we say Nama Rupas? Because Maya itself is mithya. Maya doesn't have its own independent existence. That which is independently existent is this imperishable, changeless, all-pervading consciousness. That alone is Satyam. It is independently existent. On the other hand, Maya depends on Brahman. We call this independent consciousness, independently existing consciousness is Brahman. Maya depends on Brahman for its existence. So Maya is Mithya. And therefore, the world that is an evolute of Maya is also Mithya. It depends upon Brahman for its existence. So we have two types of material causes now. Brahman, in association with Maya, becomes this intelligent cause Ishvara. But Ishvara is also the material. And we have two types of material. One is the changeless material cause, that is Brahman. Brahman undergoes no change in the production of this world. Exactly like a rope undergoes no change in the production of the snake. It's called Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Vivarta Upadana Karanam. There is a definition for Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Swaswarupa aparityagena rupantara apattihi. Swaswarupa aparityagena rupantara apattihi. This means that Brahman transforms into this world without actually undergoing any change. Swaswarupa aparityagena, without giving up its nature. It appears as something else, exactly like the rope appears as a snake. On the other hand, Maya is called Parinami Upadana Karanam, the changing material cause. Swaswarupa Parityagena Rupantara Apattihi. So Maya undergoes a change in the production of the world because the unmanifest Nama Rupas become manifest. And we took the example of milk transforming to curd. So there are two types of these upadana karanam. Brahman provides existence and consciousness to this world. Maya provides all the nama rupas. So if we look at verse 8, it says upadane. In this vivarta upadana karanam, that is Brahman, upadane. Khiladhare, which is the substratum of whatever is projected. Why is it the substratum? Why is it Akhiladhara? Because whatever is projected is mithya. It doesn't have its own existence. Therefore, something has to provide it the existence. That is Brahman. Akhiladhare. Jaganti, Jaganti, Parameshware, Sargasthiti Layan Yanti. So he's calling this Upadana, Upadane, Akhiladhare, Parameshware. So Brahman with Maya becomes Parameshwara, the creator, sustainer, and resolver of this world. And because it, he is the Upadana, because he is the Upadana, the material cause, the world cannot exist independently of the material cause. Wherever the world is, the material is. Wherever the world is, Brahman is. Akhiladhara. Jaganti sarga sthiti layanyanti. So these words are. Why does Bhagavad Pada use the plural words? Because the entire purpose of this Srishti is to give the results of the Punya Papa to the various jivas. And therefore, for those jivas who have done predominance of Punya, there need to be the higher lokas. For those that have predominance of Papa, there needs to be the lower lokas. And for those which have Punya and Papa in balance, there is the Bhuloka. Jaganti. Sargastuti layan yanti budbudani iva varini. Bhagavad gave the example of bubbles. Exactly like in an ocean, there are all these bubbles and foam, etc., that arise. They hang around for some time and they disappear. Why the example of bubbles? Because their existence is momentary. But we may say that all of these galaxies, etc., exist for billions of years. So as we saw, Brahman is eternal, beginningless, and endless. And in the time scale of the eternity of Brahman, even the appearance or disappearance of galaxies that are there for billions of years are like bubbles coming and going. They appear to be momentary in the time scale of eternity. So, verse number 8 pointed out how these worlds arise from Brahman and Maya, from Parameshwara. Then verse number 9 talks about how the individual beings arise. So here Bhagavad uses a slightly different language. He says Nitye Vishnu. Nitye Vishnu. So the same Upadana Karanam is Nitya because it is always existent. There never was a time when it's not, there never will be a time when it will not be. Nitya. Trikalepi tishtati. And Vishnu. So here, Bhagavad is equating Parameshwara and Vishnu. Like we saw, he is giving us a subtle message here that Shiva and Vishnu are one and the same. They are just different names given to Brahman in association with Maya. So in this Nitya Vishnu, what happens? Vyaktayaha sarvaha vividhaha prakalpitaha. So here, Vyaktihi is a Strilinga Shabda. Vyaktihi. And therefore, these adjectives that go along with Vyaktayaha. Vyaktayaha is the Prathama Vibhakti. Bahuvachanam of Vyaktihi. So Vyaktayaha, Sarvaha, Vividhaha, Prakalpitaha, they are all Strilinga Shabdas here. All these beings, all these varied beings are projected. Sarvaha, Vividhaha, Vyaktayaha, Prakalpitaha. These varying beings are projected. And when we say varying beings are projected, why are they varying? Because again, the type of body that a jiva gets depends on the jiva's karma. There are bodies that are fit for higher lokas, like Deva Shariras, for those who have a predominance of punya. And then there are bodies meant for lower lokas, for those who have a predominance of papa. And for those that have a balance of punya and papa, there is a manushya sharira. There are varied bodies. And we saw that there is a projection of the sukshma and the sthula shariras of the jivas. So from Brahman and Maya arises first the sukshma akasha. The sukshma panchabhutas arise, the sukshma akasha. And from that, sukshma vayuhu. And from that, sukshma agnihi, sukshma jalam, sukshma prithvi, pancha sukshma bhutani. And these sukshma bhutas come together to form the sukshma shariras of the various jivas. And then there's the process of panchikaranam, through which the sukshma bhutas come together to form the panchasthula bhutani. And from the panchasthula bhutani arise the sthula shariras of the various jivas. As we saw, that these are all very much like these fibers arising from cotton. And from the fibers, subtle fibers arises the yarn. From the yarn arises the fabric. In the fabric, there are a variety of dresses, but the reality is cotton and cotton alone. It's cotton all the way. Similarly, the Sukshma Bhutas come about from Brahman and Maya, the Sukshma Panchabhutas, the Sukshma Shariras, the Sthula Panchabhutas, the Sthula Shariras, the Sthula Lokas. All of these come about, but they are Nama Rupa alone. The reality is Brahman all the way. Then Bhagavad Pada here uses another adjective, Satchid Atmani. Nitye Satchidatmani Vishnau Prakalpitaha. What is this Atma of Ishvara, if we ask? What is the essence of Ishvara? It is Sat and Chit, of the nature of existence and consciousness. If we take anything in the world, nothing has its own existence. Why? Because it's just Namarupa. It has borrowed existence from Ishvara. Similarly, if we take anything in this world, any conscious being in this world, no conscious being has got inherent consciousness. Because the Sthula and Sukshma Sharira are all Jada. Jada Vastu doesn't have any inherent consciousness, it is inert. The consciousness is also borrowed. If we take the example of a dream, my dream, then in my dream I see the mountain and the mountain lion. So the mountain in my dream, where does it borrow the existence from? Does it have its own existence? No. The mountain in my dream borrows existence from the waker. With reference to the dream, the waker alone is existent because the waker is the material for the dream. The waker has provided the material for the dream. The dream doesn't have its own material. So the existence of the mountain belongs to the waker. Now, what about the consciousness of the mountain lion that I see in the dream? The consciousness of the mountain lion in the dream is also borrowed from the waker alone. The waker has lent that consciousness to the mountain lion in the dream. So similarly, we look at the mountain here. Mountain here represents all the inert objects in the world. So all the mountains representing all the inert objects in the world have basically borrowed their existence from Brahman. Nitye Vishnau Satchidatmani Prakalpitaha. They have borrowed their existence from this Nitya Vishnu who is of the nature of Sat and Chit. And if we take the mountain lion in this world, that is representative for all the conscious beings, then the consciousness of the mountain lion is really borrowed from this Nitya Vishnu, who is of the nature of Sat and Chit, because everything else is inert, has got no inherent consciousness. The consciousness of any being, including myself, is really borrowed from Brahman. So whenever I say I am really referring to Brahman, who is of the nature of Sat and Chit. I'm really referring to this Nitya Vishnu, who is of the nature of Sat and Chit. So Sat Chit Atmani Nitye Vishnu Prakalpita. Satchidatmani Nitye Vishnu Prakalpitaha. There is another adjective Bhagavad Pada uses here, Anusyute. Satchidatmani Anusyute. So again, all of these are in Saptami Vibhakti. Satchid Atmani, Anusyute, Nitye, Vishnu. All of these are in Saptami. They are all adjectives for Vishnu. You can take it as an adjective for Vishnu. So Anusyute means woven, woven into, woven uninterruptedly woven. So this Satchidatma is uninterruptedly woven into this entire world. Meaning, wherever this world is, the Satchidatma is also there. The world doesn't exist independent of Satchidatma because no product can exist independent of the material. So let's take the example of an embroidery here, since Anusyute word is used. Often the example given is of a string. A string is beaded through various beads, or a string is strung through various flowers to form a garland. So wherever the flowers are, the string has to be there. Anusyute. But here, let's take the example of an embroidery. So let's say there's a ball of wool. And then using this ball of wool, this girl is doing an embroidery. And the father visits, sees the embroidery developing every time he meets his daughter. He sees that she has developed this embroidery further. So when he sees this first, there's just the ball of wool. Then gradually, as she is creating this embroidery, patterns start to appear. He sees that there are these mountains, and then there is a sun that comes between the mountains, and there is a lake. On the next day, he finds that she has embroidered this lake, and in the lake there is a boat, and in the boat there are people sitting there. So where did all this come from? From the ball of wool. That is the material. And even when the embroidery exists, what is really there? It is that ball of wool. And let's say now somebody starts to pull this string. And as one is pulling the string and then wrapping it, uh, then slowly the forms start to disappear. The mountains go, the sun goes, the lake goes, boat goes, the boatman goes. Where did they go? They all go back into this ball of wool. So that embroidery was nothing but wool in different nama and rupa. So similarly, we say that the Satchid Atma, Nitya Vishnu, has alone appeared in the form of all the nama rupas here. All these names and forms are basically woven into this embroidery like Jagat. What is the material? It is all Satchid Atma. Satchid Atma is analogous to that ball of wool. And wherever there is an inert object, Satchid Atma is lending Sat, existence to that inert object. Wherever there is a conscious being, then Satchid Atma is lending Sat and Chit to that conscious being. So Bhagavad gives another example here. Hatake Katakadivat. So Hataka means gold and Kataka means ornaments. Hatake Katakadivat. So like ornaments are superimposed on gold. There is really no substance called the bangle. The substance is gold alone. Even if there are thousands of ornaments, the substance is gold alone. The ornaments are empty, hollow names and forms only. We use the unfortunate expression called golden bangle, golden chain, etc., which has converted the substance into an adjective. Really speaking, the substance should be the noun. The more appropriate adjective, as we have seen, would be bangly gold, chainy gold, necklacey gold. That is really the most appropriate way to call the ornaments because they are really gold alone. Similarly, in this prapancha, in this world we see in front of us, everything here is empty names and forms. What is really here is Brahman alone, Satchit Atma Brahman alone. So really speaking, we say that chair exists, table exists, etc., where we have converted that existence into some kind of an adjective or a verb. Really speaking, the existence itself should be the noun, because the existence is the material. Sat is the material of all the nama rupas. Sat is the material. When we say chair is, then we have made chair into the noun and is as the verb, or isnness as some kind of an attribute of the chair. But really speaking, that isness should be the noun, the chair is the namarupa. So we should really be saying spacey Brahman, because space is nothing but Brahman. Airy Brahman, it's Brahman in the form of air. Fiery Brahman, Brahman in the form of fire. Watery Brahman, Brahman in the form of water. Earthy Brahman, Brahman in the form of Prithvi Tattva. Achari Brahman, Tabli Brahman, Wali Brahman. These are really the more appropriate terms, because it is Brahman appearing in different namas and rupas. So even if we take, Swamiji here gives the example of Vishnu Sahasranama. In Vishnu Sahasranama, there are 1,000 names of Vishnu. But are each of the names indicating a different substance underneath? No. The substance that is being talked about is only one, that is Vishnu. Vishnu has got these 1,000 names. And the first name of Vishnu is Vishwam. Vishwam Vishnurva Shatkaro. Vishwam is the first name in Vishnu Sahasranama. That indicates that the entire world here is nothing but a name of Vishnu. It is Vishnu himself appearing in the form of the world that we have named the world. So the message of these two verses is that there is never any real creation at all. The substance is never created. Creation is only of nama rupas only. So hatake katakadivats, like these various ornaments arise in gold, there is only one substance, the gold, just a creation of different nama rupas. The goldsmith never really creates the gold. What is a goldsmith doing? He is highly skilled in creating different nama rupas only. What has been created here is only names and forms. That's why prakalpitaha. Prakalpitaha means there are only names and forms that have been superimposed on the substance. Substance is one, unchanging. Vivarta upadana karanam, that is Brahma. Then the question is, where, who, what is that Brahman? Who is that Brahman? This conscious being who is of the nature of existence, consciousness. Who is that Brahman? You say it's really the one who is asking the question. That Jiva is none other than Brahman. Why? Because Vyaktayah Vividha Sarvaha Prakalpitaha. All these Sukshma and Sthula Shariras have been superimposed on the Upadana Karana. That is of the nature of Sat and Chit. So I who am asking, where is that Brahman? This I is really pointing to that Brahman only. The real meaning of this I is this Nitya Vishnu, who is of the nature of Sat and Chit. This I is really Brahman. But then I am this puny creature in this immense world. if I say this. Say that's the same thing that the dream individual says in the dream. The dream individual says, I am this puny creature in the immense world. This immense world. But when that dream individual wakes up and understands the adhishthanam, gets introduced to the adhishthanam, then he knows that I am the waker in whom this puny individual as well as this separate world appear. I am the upadhanam of this entire thing. So similarly, when one knows the adhishthanam, that is Brahman, one understands that I, as Brahman, am the adhishthanam of this puny individual as well as this separate world I am seeing in front of me. And there are three properties of this adhishthanam. For example, Bhagavad gave two examples here. One is Udbudani iva varini. In the water, various bubbles appear. Or Hatake katakadivat. In the gold, various ornaments appear. What's the relationship between the bubbles and the water? The water is the adhishthanam. What is the relationship between the ornaments and the gold? Gold is the adhishthanam. And the adhishthanam always has these three properties. And the adhishthanam is satyam. The adhishthanam is the one that really exists. The adhishthanam is advayam, meaning that it is the only reality. There is no other second thing to limit it. Wherever the water is, wherever the bubbles are, water is there. Water can never be limited by the bubbles. Wherever the ornaments are, gold is there. Gold can never be limited by a second thing, which is the ornament. There is really speaking no second thing at all. It is advayam. And then the adhishthanam is asangaha, meaning the adhishthanam being satyam is never affected by the mithya. So the water can never be affected by the coming and going of the bubbles. The gold can never be affected by the coming and going of the ornaments. So similarly here as well, I am really Brahman. I am the adhishthanam of this whole thing. And being the adhishthanam, I too have these three properties. I am the Satyam. I alone really exist. I am Advayam. There is no second thing here to limit me. Wherever you look at anything, I am there. As the very Upadhanam of that thing. In fact, there is no second thing at all. I am Advayam. I alone really exist. And I am asangaha, because being satyam, mithya cannot touch me. Therefore, I can never be affected. I am not really related to anything at all. For me to be affected, there should be a real relationship. But there is no real relationship between me and anything else, because there is nothing else really speaking. There should be a second thing for me to be related to, for me to be affected by that thing. But there is no second thing at all. Therefore, a consequence of me being Advayam is that I am Asangaha, not related to anything at all. And therefore, I can never be affected by anything at all, just as a waker can never be affected by whatever happens in the dream. Now, Bhagavad Gita is giving a few more examples to reinforce what has been talked about. We will read the 10th verse. Yathakasho Hrishikeshah
यथाकाशो हृषीकेशः
Nanopadhigato Vibhuः
नानोपाधिगतो विभुः
Tadbhedat Bhinnavad Bhati
तद्भेदाद् भिन्नवद्भाति
तन्नाशे केवलो भवेत्.
तन्नाशे केवलो भवेत्.
So Bhagavad here is giving the example of Akashaha. Yatha Akashaha. One point here, when we chanted the verse, we said Yatha Kasho Hrishikeshaha. What is in the verse is Hrishikesho. And that is there because of a Sandhi rule. If the whole thing is chanted continuously, Yatha Kasho Hrishikesho Nano Padhigato Vibhuhu, the whole thing is chanted continuously, it's okay to say Hrishikesho because it is because of a Sandhi rule. The next letter is Na, Nakara, so it's a soft consonant, a Mridu Vyanjanam. And therefore the Visarga becomes the Okaraha. But if we are breaking at the quarter of the verse, Yatha Kasho Hrishikesho, and then take a break, Nano Padhigato Vibhuhu. This chanting is not correct because we have broken the Sandhi there. And therefore, whenever at the end of a quarter we see this Okaraha, which is a result of a Visargaha, then we should restore the Visargaha there. Therefore, Yatha Kasho Hrishikesha is the correct way to chant it, if we are breaking it. Nanopadhi gato vibhuhu, Nanopadhi gataha, Nana Upadhi gataha. So here the term Upadhi is being used. We should understand what the Upadhi is. So Upadhi is a word that doesn't have any English translation at all. It is impossible to translate it into English. When you think deeply about some subject, then you are likely to see you're likely to gain some insights into that subject. And based on that insight, you come up with certain terms that capture that insight. But when another civilization has really not thought deeply enough into that about that particular subject, then there was no need for that civilization to invent a word for it. And therefore, there are many things in Vedanta for which we cannot find equivalent words in English at all, because that Western civilization hasn't really plumbed into the depths of this topic to the extent that has happened in Bharatadesh. So Upadhi has no equivalent translation. But we will attempt to describe what it means in English. The closest thing we can come up with is that it is a differentiator. Differentiator. And a differentiator is called Vyavartakaha in Sanskritam. Vyavartakaha means a differentiator. And there are two types of differentiators. One is a Visheshanam. Visheshanam is an adjective or an attribute. So an adjective or an attribute helps differentiate one thing from other things of the same species or of a different species. And there is another type of differentiator, that is the Upadhi. We will continue to use the word Upadhi. So now what is the difference between a Visheshanam and an Upadhi? So the Visheshanam is, as we said, an adjective or an attribute. For example, let's take a pot. So this is a blue pot. Now, the blueness of the pot can be said to be an adjective or an attribute of the pot. And it helps differentiate the pot from other pots around it. Like there's a red pot, a brown pot, black pot. So this blue pot helps differentiate this pot from the other pots around it. So the important thing to note is that the blueness has affected the pot. The blueness has entered the pot and is differentiating the pot from the other pots around. It is really an attribute of the pot. On the other hand, we have a differentiator called the Upadhi. So an Upadhi is a differentiator that helps distinguish an object from other objects without altering that object in any manner at all. For example, let us take the pot space. So we take the space that is enclosed within the pot. Then we use the term called pot space. So the term pot space, with the help of the pot, I'm distinguishing the space within the pot from the space in other pots of the space outside the pot. But if we look into the matter, has the pot really affected the space in any way? Is potness an attribute of the space? Not at all. The pot hasn't really affected the space at all, but still the pot helps distinguish the pot space from other spaces. So pot is called an upadhi. It's a differentiator that helps differentiate something without altering that thing. The blueness has altered the pot. Therefore, it's a visheshanam. The potness has not altered the space, but therefore it's an upadhi. Similarly, we talk about this red flower kept next to a crystal. So now the redness appears in the crystal. I can talk about the redness of the crystal. But is redness of the crystal really a visheshana? It is not a visheshanam, because the redness hasn't altered the crystal at all. It is just an attribute of the flower that is helping distinguish the crystal. Flower is helping distinguish the crystal in terms of saying red crystal versus blue crystal or whatever. The redness hasn't altered the crystal at all. So this is another example of the upadhi. It's a differentiator that helps differentiate a thing without altering the thing. So here, Bhagavad is taking the Akasha example. Yatha Akashaha Vibhuhu. So Vibhuhu means all pervading. So Akasha space is all pervading. Vibhuhu. Nanopadhi Gataha. But then space gets associated with various upadhis. Nana Upadhi Gataha Akashaha. The space gets associated with various upadhis. Like space gets enclosed within a pot or within a room. You can talk about space being enclosed in a room. So these are all the upadhis that enclose the space. Tad bhedat bhinnavat bhati. So differences, due to the differences in the enclosures, the space also appears to have differences due to differences in the enclosures, not in the space. So there seems to be now a plurality of spaces. For example, there's a pot here, there's a pot there, there's a pot there. We can talk about the pot enclosed spaces. There appears to be a plurality of spaces. And then there appears to be a variety of spaces also in terms of names and forms. We can say this pot space is small, this pot space is large. Or we can give these spaces names. For example, we talk about the living room. The word room indicates nothing but space. So we talk about the living room. It's a name given to a certain space. We talk about the dining room. It's a name given to a certain space where a certain activity happens. So space appears to be plural, space appears to have forms, space appears to have names. But really speaking, space is not affected at all. All these upadhis only seemingly seem to divide the space. Space is fundamentally indivisible. So if we look at why do we say that space is indivisible, right? Why space cannot really be enclosed, etc. Let's assume that there is this heap of sand. There's a heap of sand. And then I ask you to bring a pot. And then I say, dig into this sand a bit. And then bring me some sand. So this person takes the pot and at the top of the heap, he puts the pot and then takes some sand out and brings the sand. Now, what has happened is the sand has been enclosed in the pot. So we can talk about the enclosed sand. But now what has happened in the heap is that there is a hollow where the sand was. There is a hollow at the top of the heap. So now I tell him empty the sand here. Now I tell him take that same pot and bring me that hollow. Bring me that hollow from the heap of the sand. So now can he take the pot, go there, place it carefully and tightly seal the pot and bring that hollow to me? Is it even possible? So we say as long as the sand was there, the sand could be enclosed and brought in the pot. But now that the hollow is there, no matter what material the pot is made of, you can invent any new material. You will never capture that hollow. That hollow is what we call the space. You'll never enclose the space and carry it somewhere else. Impossible. But then this pot has enclosed the space, we say. We talk about the pot having enclosed the space. We say that's just a loose language that we are using. Because really speaking, there's space outside the pot. There's space inside the pot. But even the walls of the pot are pervaded by space, and without that space, the walls even wouldn't even exist. The space is there even where the walls are. There is unoccupied space outside the pot. There is unoccupied space inside the pot. There is occupied space where the walls are, but there's still space. It is occupied space. If the space wasn't there, then the walls couldn't even exist. So there is space outside the pot, there is space inside the pot, and there is space where the walls of the pot are. So really speaking, even this phrase inside the pot, space inside the pot is flawed language. Really speaking, the pot should be said to be inside space. It is not the space that is inside the pot. Pot is inside space. Even modern science, if we look at it, it would say the pot is made up of particles like molecules, atoms, etc. And if we look at what the latest models of science say, is that the atom itself has got the nucleus and electrons around it. And they say that if we blow up this atom to be the size of a stadium, let us say that we blow up the atom to be the size of a stadium, then the nucleus of the atom would be like a pebble kept in the middle of the stadium. And the electrons would be like small particles, dust particles floating around in the stadium. Those are the electrons. The nucleus is like the pebble. Now, what is the rest of the stadium? Basically, space. So 99.999 whatever percent of the atom is really space only. It is unoccupied space. And even where the nucleus is, the space is there, just happens to be occupied space. So when we look at this, 99%, 99.999% of that pot is really space. There's space even within the walls of the pot. The space outside, space within the walls, space inside. Really speaking, what is really happening is that there is only space and there are a few particles of the pot floating around in space. And that's what we are really saying, that the space has been enclosed by the pot. Really speaking, the continuity of the space has not been affected by the pot at all. In fact, the pot is in space. The space is not in the pot. Now, when these enclosures appear, we talk about the plurality of spaces. When these pots are created, we talk about multiple spaces. And then when these pots are destroyed, we talk about this plurality having gone away. So Bhagavad Pada says, Tannashe kevalaha bhave. And these upadhis are destroyed, then the space is only one. We talk about the plurality when the upadhis are created. When these upadhis are destroyed, we say that plurality is only one. There has gone away. There's only one space. But really speaking, the coming and going of the multiplicity of pots hasn't affected space at all. It only appears to be enclosed when the upadhis are there, and when the upadhis are destroyed, it only appears to become one again. It appears to become many, and then again at pralaya, when the nasha happens, it appears to become one. But really speaking, it never changed even when the upadhis were there. There was not even an iota of change in space. When the pot goes away, we say that the space inside the pot has merged with the space outside the pot. But that is also wrong language. We can talk about merger only if there were two separate things to begin with. We are saying there was never two separate things to begin with. So there is no real merger that happens when the pot goes away. The enclosed space is not a reality. The space outside is not a reality. There's only one space, that is the reality. We talk about this seemingly enclosed space. It's okay to say that the seemingly enclosed space seemingly merges with the the seeming space that is outside the pot. There is no real merger when the pot is destroyed. So we say that tannashe sati kevalaha bhavet. This should not be taken as a real nasha. We are mistaken. If we mistake the upadhi to be a visheshana, then we would talk about a reality of enclosed space and a reality of the space outside and a reality of the merger when the pot is broken. But then the pot is an upadhi. It has not really affected the space at all. So the nashaha is just the understanding that the visheshanam was really an upadhi. There was never really separate spaces to begin with. So now, having given this example, Bhagavad comes to Vedanta. It says, Tatha Hrishikeshaha Vibhuhu Yathakasho Hrishikeshaha. So Tatha Yatha Akashaha Tatha Hrishikeshaha. What is Hrishikesha? So there is this place near Haridwar that we call Rishikesh. Rishikesh. So that is really Hrishikesha that has become Rishikesh. Rishikesh means hair of a Rishi. So Rishikesh is not really hair of the Rishi. It is really Hrishikesha that has been in colloquial language made into Rishikesh. So what is Rishi? What is Hrishikesha? Hrishikānam indriyanam ishaha. So Hrishikam means indriyam. Indriyam means sense organs. So Indriyanam Ishaha, Hrishikanam Ishaha, Hrishikeshaha. So when Hrishika and Isha come together, it becomes Hrishikesha. It means Lord of the sense organs. So Lord of the sense organs. So that without which the sense organs cannot function. And what is essential for the sense organs to function is consciousness. Satchidatma. Satchidatma, Upadana, Vishnu, Nitya. Vishnu is the Lord of the sense organs. Without this consciousness, the sense organs cannot function. Therefore, here Hrishikesha refers to this consciousness principle. So, Tatha Hrishikesha Vibhuhu. So, this Satchid Atma, or the nature of Chit, is also Vibhuhu, all pervading. The all pervading existence consciousness. Nanupadhi Gataha gets enclosed within various bodies, just like space gets enclosed within the pots. When these bodies are created, Vividhaha, Vyaktayaha, Prakalpitaha, and these different Sukshma, Sthula, Shariras get created, the consciousness appears to be enclosed within these bodies. And because it gets enclosed, Tad Bhedat Bhinnavat Bhati. Because of the difference in the enclosures, this consciousness also appears to take different names and forms. It appears to have this multiplicity and different names and different forms. For example, we can say this is a human being, conscious human being. This is a whale, it's a conscious being. This is an ant, it's a conscious being. The consciousness appears to be enclosed within these different bodies of the human being, the whale, the ant, and a variety of beings like this. But we say it's really the plurality of the enclosures. The consciousness is not really affected by this. Because consciousness is indivisible and undivided, exactly like space. And tannashe sati kevalaha bhave. So when these upadhis are destroyed, we can talk about the merger of this consciousness with the all-pervading consciousness. We talk about this person after the death of the person. We talk about having attained merger with Ishvara. The Atma having merged with Ishvara, etc., or the soul having merged with Ishvara. There's a lot of language that is used to indicate some type of merger has happened. But we say that the nasha of the upadhi, this physical nasha of the upadhi is not being talked about here. It is really not nasha, but badhaha. Badhaha refers to the dismissal of the existence, not the destruction of the upadhi, but the dismissal of the existence of the upadhi. So upadhi nashaha is upadhau satyatva buddhi nashaha. Upadhinashaha is really upadhau satyatva buddhinashaha. I'm giving reality to this upadhi and I'm giving reality to the transference of the attributes of the upadhi. That is the problem. The moment I see that these upadhis are not satyam, they are really mithya, then I understand that kevalaha bhave, that this consciousness is really one. So we say we don't need to powder a pot in order to dismiss its existence. I can dismiss the existence of the pot by understanding that it is clay alone. The pot is only Namarupa. That is how I dismiss the existence of the pot. So similarly, Nashe, Tannashe Sati, Kevalaha Bhave. So how do I dismiss these upadhis? By understanding that they are only Namarupas, they don't have their own existence. Existence is really borrowed from the Satchid Atma. So all of these upadhis are reduced to mithya. And what is mithya can never really affect the satyam in any way at all. Mithya cannot enclose the satyam, because if we talk about the body itself, and outside the body the satyam is there, okay. Inside the body the satyam is there, but even the walls of the body are nothing but the satyam alone. The walls of the body cannot exist independently of the Satyam. So Satyam continues to be all pervading, unaffected by the Nama Rupa. The body is only like the wave appearing in an ocean. It hasn't in any way changed the continuity of the underlying water that is the Satyam. We can talk about seemingly water being enclosed in the wave, but water is really not enclosed by the wave. Similarly, this body mind upadhi cannot really enclose the consciousness, existence consciousness in any manner at all. That is the upadhana karanam. Kevalaha bhave. So the same thought is continued further in the next shloka. We will read that. Nanopadhivashadeva
नानोपाधिवशादेव
जातिवर्णाश्रमादयः
जातिवर्णाश्रमादयः
आत्मन्यारोपितास्तो ये
आत्मन्यारोपितास्तो ये
रसवर्णादिभेदवत्.
रसवर्णादिभेदवत्.
So nana upadhi vashad eva jati varnashramadayah atmanyaropitasto ye is split as atmani aropitaha toye. Atmani aropitaha toye rasavarnadi bhedavat. So Bhagavad Pada is continuing the thought of this Upadhi, the discussion of the Upadhi, and he points out Nanopadhi Vashad Eva, Nana Upadhi Vashat Eva. Because of this multiplicity of Upadhis, what happens because of this multiplicity of Upadhis? There's a transference of their attributes. The attributes of the Upadhi are transferred to the Upadana Karana. And he gives the examples of the attributes of the Upadhi that are transferred. Jati, Varna, Ashrama, Adayaha. So we talk about now these beings, these conscious beings having different Jati. Jati means we can talk about their Gotras, for example. We talk about Bharadwaja Gotra or Kaundinya Gotra. They are all attributes of the body. The body was born in a particular lineage. But then this person begins to say, I belong to such and such a Gotra. I belong to the Gotra. That's the transference, because I is really the Upadana Karana. When I say I belong to such and such a Gotra, I have transferred the attribute of the body to the Upadana Karana. That is the I. Or we can talk about Jati being the race also. For example, one may say, I am Caucasian, I am Asian, I am Hispanic. In fact, when you have to fill out the form, some forms in the US, they ask about some of these things. And I always got confused looking at those options where I should be filling in my stuff, because there's some Asian and Pacific Islander or something also, something like that is there. So, and the Asian word is really sometimes associated with the Chinese people. They are called Asians. So it is sometimes not very clear what I should be filling up there. It causes some confusion. So anyway, Jati. And then there is Varna. For example, I am a Brahmana, I am a Kshatriya. So there are these kinds of things that I transfer to the I am based. They are all the attributes of the body, really. or ashrama. I am a brahmachari. These types of attributes, again, they belong to the body. Or we can say that they belong to the mind also. Because if we take these varna, etc., being as a result of the sattva, rajas, tama distribution of the person, then they really are attributes. They can be said to be attributes of the mind. But again, I transfer it to the I am. I belong to this race. I belong to this varna. I belong to this ashram. And adayaha, meaning there are infinite varieties of attributes that I can get identified with because of the upadhi. For example, the color of the skin. I am white. I am black. I am brown. Or based on one's age, one can say, I am a child, I am young, I am middle-aged, I am now old. Or based on the gender, I am male, I am female. So there is all these varieties of attributes, they all belong to the Upadhi, not to the Satchidatma. So Atmani aropitaha, but they are all aropitaha, means superimposed on the Atma. Attributes of the Upadhi are transferred to the Atma. This is because, why does this happen? Because one takes the Upadhi to be a Visheshana. One doesn't understand that it is a really an Upadhi. Like the redness of the flower which transferred to the crystal, and a child may think the crystal is really red. But a knowledgeable person knows that the crystal is colorless. So similarly, one is ignorant of one's own nature, then one does this transference of the attributes of the Upadhi onto my own nature. For example, the Shariras. The Shariras are located. The location is a property of the Sharir. That's why the mobile phone can show you the exact, when you hold a mobile phone, the GPS latitude and longitude that it shows. It belongs to the Sharira holding the mobile phone. But then when the Sharira moves around, I say, I am moving. I am traveling. I am located in this house right now. So I have transferred the attributes of the Sharira onto the Atma. And we say that this conclusion that we have been talking about, that I am Apurnaha, which arises because of this transference of the attribute. I am mortal, I am limited, I am suffering, I am Apurnaha. All of this confusion because of transference of the attributes of the limited upadhis to this limitless Satchid Atma. Bhagavad says such a transference happens nanopadhi vashadeva, because of the multiplicity of upadhis, jati varnashramadaya, all of these are transferred to the Atma, Atmani aropitaha. And Bhagavad gives an example here, toye rasavarnadi bhedavat. Toya refers to water. So if we take a glass of water, and then let's say I add some turmeric to it, then the water now appears to be yellow. But this yellowness hasn't fundamentally altered the water in any way. The water continues to be H2O. The addition of the turmeric has not altered the water in any way at all. So this yellowness is really an upadhi that comes about. Turmeric is an upadhi that transfers its yellowness to the water, but the water hasn't fundamentally changed at all. So this is the transference of the varna here. Rasa varna, the bhedavat means transference of color to the water. Varna is transference of color to the water because of an upadhi of turmeric. Or let's say I add some salt to the water. Now I say water is salty, but the salt hasn't fundamentally altered the water in any way, but the salt appears to have transferred its saltiness to the water. So salt is the upadhi here that transfers the rasa. Rasa means taste. So this transference of color and taste to the water because of the upadhi. Water hasn't fundamentally changed. Similarly, even this atma, atmani aropitaha, all these attributes become superimposed on the atma. Why? Because one has not understood the nature of the atma. So atma can never be sullied by the attributes of the body mind at all. Which is why Pujya Swamiji said that even if there is one person who says, I am a sinner, I am a sinner. He says, I have committed the sin, I am a sinner. Even to that person, it can be taught that you are really that limitless, pure Atma, unsullied by the attributes of the body and the mind, because that is the truth. That is really the truth of the Atma. So he may not understand this. That is a different matter. But still the teaching is valid that you are that pure, limitless Atma. Can be taught even to a person who has a very lowly opinion about that person himself. So these bodies and minds are reduced to upadhis only when one understands the nature of the Atma, that Atma is the Satyam Brahma, and all these bodies and minds, my body and the mind, they are purely Namarupa Upadhis. They are Mithya Upadhis. Only when one understands this, then one understands that Satyam can never be affected by the Mithya, and therefore, since Satyam can never be affected by the Mithya, what to talk about the attributes of the Mithya? The attributes of the Mithya can never taint the Satyam. So when one has this vision, then one knows that all of this is only an upadhi. The Atma is really unaffected. So for an Ajnani, the body and the mind are like a Visheshan. They really transfer their attributes to the Atma. But for a jnani who knows that I am the Satyam Brahma, I am unaffected by mithya, for such a jnani, he understands that all of these are an upadhi, they do not fundamentally affect me at all. So the jnani never says that I am suffering because of the attributes of the body and mind. Jnani always says, I am Purnam Brahma, utterly unaffected by whatever happens to the upadhi of the body and the mind. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha Hari Om